Shelby Oaks is the directorial debut for YouTuber, now filmmaker Chris Stuckman. We follow a woman named Mia, played by Camille Sullivan, who has a sister that's gone missing. In Mia's investigation to find out what happened to her sister Riley, she uncovers that supernatural forces might be responsible. And that's all pretty much said. Without giving any spoilers to you guys, this will be a spoiler-free review. I can't believe I'm reviewing a Chris Stuckman directed movie right now. This is a huge achievement, obviously, for Chris Stuckman, but I think it's an even bigger achievement for the movie content creating community. I'll explain what I mean by that in a sec, but I do want to start off saying this review is going to be a little different because I got the chance to actually hang out and watch Shelby Oaks sitting right next to Chris Stuckman. The lovely people at Neon were kind enough to reach out to me and say, hey, we're having a screening in Austin, Texas. We know you're in Dallas. Would you like to come down, meet Chris, and watch the movie? No exchange of money or sponsorship agreements were done. It was literally just an opportunity I jumped at because, yeah, I'm a fan of Chris. I grew up watching a lot of his reviews. He's definitely one of the biggest influences in what I do now, which is also reviewing movies. So I do want to talk a little bit about what it was like hanging out with him, some of the things he let me know about the movie, and why I think this is such a big achievement. And if you just want to know my thoughts on Shelby Oaks as the movie, I'll put a timestamp and you can skip to that.
I've been watching your videos for a while. I think you're great at what you do. I think you're super, super talented, very passionate. You know, like there's a lot of people who make videos about movies online, and you can always tell the difference between like a host, someone who's very trained to talk about movies and hits all the right marks and knows how to say everything, and someone who actually genuinely loves the shit, and that's you.
But okay, I was saying this is a big achievement, not just for Chris, but for the content creating community. We are at a time now where a lot of content creators are now turning filmmakers. Whether it's Danny and Michael Philippou, they did Talk to Me and this year's Bring Her Back. We have Markiplier, who's making his movie Iron Lung. A24 just hired the youngest director in their studio's history to make the live action Backrooms movie. But with Chris Stuckman's case, it's a little bit more closer to home because, well, he does what I do, reviewing movies. And that, I think, does put a different perspective on his approach and the pressures involved with him putting a movie out there. I mean, his job was literally to sit down, critique a movie, tell you why it's good, tell you why it's bad. You would think a person who does that nonstop for a living for years, well then, boy, you better be sure you're making a good movie, because how you gonna sit there and tell me what makes a movie good when you can't even do it yourself?
No, that's something that I tried very hard not to think about while making it, because it's just like, it's tough because, and I've mentioned this before, but one of the hardest things that anyone in any type of creative space can deal with is how you are perceived, like who you are based off of public perception. Whether that's a sports athlete who wants to get into music, and they're like, well, wait, what are you doing? Like, you do basketball, or yeah, like, why are you doing? But in the case of like talking about movies online while also making them, in my head space, my warped brain, I was always a filmmaker ever since I was a kid, making movies with my friends. The movie critic thing came as a surprise. You know, I never expected to be considered that. I never expected for it to be successful. I did it for many years without making any money initially. Just because I enjoyed talking about movies online. And so for me, naturally as a person, it was easy to just start making a real movie because I've always been making movies. But the hardship is like, you know, other people might look at that and say, well, you know, I'm going to look at this differently because I know you first as this thing, which is completely understandable because honestly, I would do the same thing, man.
So there's that added weight into doing this, right? But there was also the inspirational part where I look at Shelby Oaks as proof of concept, baby. It's right there. There is a proven path from being just a fan of movies, buying a camera, turning it on, spreading your love and passion of film, and someday making a movie of your own. Chris Stuckman has laid down that path. It's inspiring because, hey, if I were to lock in enough, I could do what he did. Or it's just as intimidating because, oh, now there's no excuse for me. He did it, so I should be able to as well.
There is a path, and you are the proof of that. How do you feel that you're now even a bigger inspiration for people online?
That's so sweet of you. Thank you. That's honestly the ultimate like goal for me is I just want to feel like other people who want to make stuff feel like they can, you know, because I'm just a YouTuber from Ohio. I don't have any connections. I didn't have any connections in the industry. Nobody gave me like a handout. There was no assistance of like, well, you know, here's the easy path. Everything was hard to get this movie made. When we debut at Fantastic Fest, it'll be 6 years since I started working on it.
Oh, wow.
And 3 years before that, my wife and I started brainstorming it. So if you count the brainstorming, it's 9 years just to get one indie film made. I just want people to know, like you said, that it can be done. There is a very clear way that you can get stuff made. And you know, Seth Rogen said on this interview show recently, the only way to guarantee failure is to quit. If you quit, you will fail because you're done. And you just have to keep going and pursuing whatever it is that you're involved in.
And same goes for you who click, watch, and enjoy these videos. I think it is easier now more than ever to be a content creator. Things like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, stuff like that has made it so much easier to gain a following, find an audience, have your voice be out there. It's literally just a matter of you being confident enough to post yourself out there. And so this is then where I want to get into the elephant in the room and the thing people don't think I'm going to bring up, but it's the way people then turned on Chris during this journey. Chris made a very strategic and I think smart move to decide he's no longer going to review movies he doesn't like. It's a move that, if I'm going to be honest, severely affected his channel. I've seen it, and heck, I've benefited from it because I've noticed more people will come to my reviews now, since they know if Chris posts a review on something, it's most likely positive because he doesn't do reviews on bad movies anymore. And again, I stand by and totally agree with Chris doing that. You cannot become a filmmaker, put yourself out there, create a movie, have it released by Neon, produced by Mike Flanagan, and then the next day jump on here and go, dude, Tron Ares? Anyways, guys, go check out Shelby Oaks. Way better than what Tron Ares did. Like, that's just not professional, and Chris Stuckman isn't that type of person.
I don't like the idea of just constantly trashing this beloved art form that has meant so much to me. I want to give back to it and celebrate it.
Even now in these comments, there's going to be people saying, Chris is a show. Chris isn't good anymore. Why are you even reviewing his movies? And I am stunned. He literally is living the dream. And people see that as a failure? And that is where I want to add the asterisk to Chris's decision. Because again, while I do think it's the right choice and he should continue on that if he wants to continue his filmmaking path, I do miss more people like Chris Stuckman on the platform. And that's always why I want to also be somebody to encourage other like-minded people to become people to have their voices heard, because I think Chris always did approach reviewing a movie with genuine love for film. Whether Chris liked or disliked a movie, he always gave a movie its flowers for what he thought it did right, for what it did well, and then on the flip side would actually be able to note to you why a movie was bad. And that art on this platform has almost completely disappeared. There is a cesspool, a cancer, a disgusting amount of content that just feed on the hate involved with a movie to a point it is performative. It is only just then to feed those negative minds who crave that negative content. A lot of times also it's not even for the movie itself, but for an actor and their outside politics or this reason, that reason, that never is actually about the movie itself, but someone's own personal agenda just projected onto it. And that's where I do miss a person like Chris Stuckman in the movie space. But in my experience going to watch the movie with Chris, seeing what he's achieved, how much love he has for his fans, it makes me then want to laugh at anybody painting Chris's journey as some sort of cowardly move. And anyone trying to paint that picture, I'm sorry, you just come off looking like a miserable, sad, jealous person. Pointing and laughing at Chris for what he's accomplished is like laughing at the kid who would always play street ball and has now made it onto an NBA court. It was just inspiring on so many levels, and I couldn't be prouder of what Chris has achieved. So with that said, now getting into what I genuinely thought of the movie, good and bad all together, because in honor of Chris and the way he approached movies, I still think it is important to be honest about one's thoughts in a movie. Let me get into what I thought of Shelby Oaks. So start off with things that like completely blew me away with Shelby Oaks is the first 17 minutes. That to me is the strongest element of this movie, and it's the thing that immediately let me know, all right, Chris Stuckman is for real. He's not just somebody who's been talking as a film fan, but then can't dish it out when the time comes. Chris, in the first 17 minutes, was actually able to create a pretty eerie and creepy atmosphere, right? So we know there is this sister that has gone missing. And for a good chunk of the movie, a lot of it is done through the found footage style. And that one was a really smart budgetary move, because the thing I want to remind people when going to this movie, you can't expect what the Rocka brothers did with Talk to Me, or even David F. Sandberg with his directorial debut Lights Out, because that was Warner Brothers offering him a decent studio budget to produce his horror short film into an actual movie. This was mainly done through Chris Stuckman's own funds and the fans who supported him, being one of the highest funded Kickstarter campaigns, but even then, it was still under $1 million. And Chris worked with that budget. There was a real sense of dread. It was setting up the world so well. Riley, the missing sister, is part of this group known as the Paranormal Paranoids, who are just kind of like these YouTube investigators exploring different abandoned haunted locations. And that mystery aspect of Mia trying to uncover what happened to her sister, it has your genuine interest. Camilla Sullivan in the role, I thought, was also a really great protagonist to follow. You really feel her pain and her desperateness to try and piece together what happened to her sister. One of my favorite aspects of the character is how this investigation and obsession with finding her sister has affected her marriage life. The movie dives a little bit into the things that she has kind of lost or put on the back burner because she's so obsessed with trying to figure out what happened to Riley. And it was in these specific moments that I even told Chris after watching the movie, he composited them so well, where dialogue didn't even need to be said for you to really feel the impact and pain of what this couple has lost due to her obsession. That's another strength I think Chris Stuckman does have and showcases in this movie, is his visual eye for telling a story. Another awesome thing I think Chris Stuckman did to maximize his budget is use Ohio, Chris Stuckman's home state, and some of its abandoned locations to really up the production value in the film. It's a lot of good landscape shots and eerie locations that Chris is able to use, and it was really a lot of those elements that left me walking out liking the movie. I enjoyed it. I think it's a strong, solid start for Chris. It shows a lot of promise, and you could obviously tell Chris has a distinct vision for how he wants things laid out. Now, on the opposite side of that, if I had to be honest on some of the things I thought were holding me back from like loving this movie or thinking it's as strong as other content creator turned filmmaker debuts, I do have a couple of things, but I do want to mention I think a lot of these things are because of the budget and limitations Chris had. So one thing I was slightly mixed on is the balance the movie has between using found footage and then switching to traditional filmmaking. I thought that for the most part, Chris handled it pretty well, and I thought it was even a unique and big risky thing to do that. You know, a lot of movies, they're either all found footage or they're all shot traditionally, right? I think Chris switches back and forth a lot of the times, and there was a part of me that felt like the movie was losing some of its atmosphere and effectiveness once it started leaning more towards the traditional filmmaking. Still though, like I said though, taking that risk in your first film and actually making it work at times, switching back and forth from those two styles of filmmaking, this was pretty cool. I think the biggest thing for me that held me back from like really loving this movie was the ultimate reveal by the end. That's where I was, I guess, slightly disappointed where things headed off towards. I don't know, I guess expecting something different or something that I really hadn't seen done before. There are great moments within the reveal. Like there is this character who lives in a house out in the woods. I don't want to say too much more than that, but they were a really well done character, played so good. It feels almost like a character ripped out of an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and I mean that in a positive way. Knowing Chris Stuckman and his love of M. Night Shyamalan, that might have been done on purpose. But the revelations you get within that house, there's aspects of it I would have liked to explored more or get a little bit more of. But the ultimate outcome of those revelations, I did find slightly generic. It's the kind of thing then that then softened the impact of the overall ending of the movie, because it's a pretty strong ending of this film that visually I was in awe and really liked that Chris went there for that, but it didn't hit the way I wanted to because of everything we had found out. Still though, again, that's just my opinion on it. A lot of people might feel completely different on the twist or see it as something really unique and like it perfectly fits with everything that the movie was building up towards. But just being honest, if there was any letdowns about it, it was just to me the reveal in the third act and where things ended up. But everything before, and especially those first 17 minutes and how that all led into like a big swell of music coming in, I was like, this is like a strong, great start. It makes me excited to see what else Chris Stuckman does and to see more of his style. And even if he's able to get a bigger budget and not as many limitations, because this was also filmed during the pandemic, during a strike. The fact this movie exists on its own, like I said, is an achievement. So when it comes to Chris Stuckman's Shelby Oaks, I'm gonna give action 3 stars. I think even with its budget limitations, there are still a few shocking bloody sequences throughout, with a few well-timed in jump scares to keep things going. Commenting the movie, I'm gonna give it 2 stars. It's not a film that really relies on its humor, and that's okay because the atmosphere and creepy vibe it creates wouldn't have clashed well with the humor, but there is the character at the end that I did find pretty funny. I think a lot of people will be laughing too. Drama in the movie, I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I kind of was hoping for a little bit more with the story. I think Chris Stuckman does such an amazing job of setting up this mystery, making you wonder what happened to the sister, giving you little tidbits and nuggets through some of the found footage tapes, and then when it got to the revelation and figuring out what happened, that's where it let me down just a little bit. But even then, there was still a lot of strong character work with Mia. Because Chris Stuckman actually does a great job of creating the creepy atmosphere, you are then put on the edge of your seat in specific moments and wondering where it's all leading towards. Suspense the movie, I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. And horror in the movie, I'm going to give it 3 stars for that eerie atmosphere and some of those visceral moments. When it comes to the 3 C's, I think cinephiles will be the ones to most appreciate this. All in all, making me feel that Shelby Oaks is definitely a movie worth checking out in theaters. I really do think you guys should be going out and supporting this movie in theaters. Not only is it a solid directorial debut for Chris Stuckman, but I do think, like I said, it's an achievement that this film exists and what it represents. That's just awesome in itself, and it should be supported on the big screen. Again, that's just my opinion on the movie, guys. I'd really love to know what you guys thought about Shelby Oaks if you got around to seeing it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.